This week on the Hollywood and Toto Podcast, not one, but two separate interviews for your viewing and listening pleasure. First up, the great Dinesh D'Souza is out with a new film called The Dragon's Prophecy, and it looks at the Israeli-Palestinian divide in an amazing new way. And then we talked to director John McPhail about his new film, Grow. It's a pumpkin growing competition with a twist or two. It's charming, it's sweet, and I can't wait for you to hear what he has to say about the film.
Welcome to the Hollywood and Toto Podcast. Entertainment news and reviews without the woke Hollywood narrative. Free speech, free expression. Now that's entertainment. And here's your host, award-winning film critic, Christian Toto.
Well, first, an explanation. First of all, I've got two interviews in the proverbial can. The films are out right now, so I wanted to get this out as soon as humanly possible, just to make sure that people know about the films and also to respect the filmmakers who share their time with me. But also, I dislocated my finger recently. My life is a mess when you type for a living and all of a sudden you have a big splinter on your hand. Well, things get a bit complicated. It has impacted my website, Hollywood and Toto. It's impacting the show. But the show, of course, must go on. So doing a double episode here, not the traditional monologue. Wanted to give you just a little explanation why the formula here is a little bit different this week. But let's get to the main event, or the main events. First up is Dinesh D'Souza. You've seen his movies, of course, for years and years. You've read his columns. You've read his books, I'm sure. Just a prolific, profound thinker, a really interesting fellow in the conservative space. And the fact that he transitioned to filmmaking and has been so successful is a little kind of a minor miracle unto itself, but also Dinesh just knows what he's doing. His latest project is called The Dragon's Prophecy, and it looks at the Israeli-Palestinian conflict from a biblical perspective. And, you know, the timing is so curious and so wonderful because obviously the big peace deal has been signed. Hopefully that will stay in place. But why do we need to have that peace deal? What are the historical ramifications of it? Why are we here in the first place? And how did the Bible predict so much of what's going on right now? That's what this movie shows. It is fascinating. And of course, Dinesh D'Souza is always doing something a little bit different with each of his films. We get into that in the conversation as well. So if you want to find out more about The Dragon's Prophecy, you can check out thedragonsprophecyfilm.com. You could buy the film on DVD right now or just stream it from your favorite home viewing device. So hope you enjoy my conversation with Dinesh D'Souza. So glad to have him on the show. And he's always got something unique to say. That's what makes him so special. Dinesh, welcome to the show. You know, sometimes filmmakers can fall into a rut to keep producing movies that their fans expect or maybe it's their comfort place. But your films don't really fall into that pattern at all. I mean, Police State is so different than 2000 Mules. And of course, The Dragon's Prophecy is wildly different as well. Talk just as a filmmaker. I don't know. I feel like you're really exploring what you can share on screen, bouncing from topic to topic. What's been your creative approach? Then we'll get more specific about the movie.
Well, my creative approach is very, I would say, supply side driven. And by that, I mean, I actually, although people credit me with making very timely films, I don't set out that way. Mm-hmm. My first film on Obama, I was intrigued by the idea that he was not the civil rights guy that people were portraying him to be, that he seemed to get his ideas from the anti-colonial ideologies of the third world via, of course, his father, the so-called dreams from my father. And I'm like, this is fascinating. No one else is saying this. And I think I can not only argue it, but show it by going into Obama's world. And similarly, in 2000 Mules, I'm like, people are talking about everyone stopping the count and boarded up windows and affidavits, and we've heard all that. But if I can show you just a different way of looking at it in terms of cell phone geo-tracking and surveillance video, and remember, as a filmmaker, you know, if you make a film about people breaking into Fort Knox, you want to see the guys coming in through the window and you want to see them taking off, loading the bars of gold into a bag. You want to see them, filling up the truck. So I'm always looking for the visual elements that make the film.
Yeah.
But in some ways, I think you're right that this film is a departure for me in this sense that all my other films are in one way or another about the meaning of America. The films, in a way, stay home here in the United States. This film takes you abroad, Israel, Hamas, unseen footage of October 7th, the war, now the peace plan. But in the end, the film brings you back home in a different way, because this is a film ultimately about the Bible. It's about good and evil. It's about the moral choices that each of us have to make. And so the film in the end concludes, it's not just about Israel. It's not just about a war over there. It is ultimately about a war that has been raging in the human soul from the beginning of time, that forces upon us a choice of which side we're going to stand on. So in this sense, my film, more than any of my previous works, integrates the political with the spiritual and even the biblical.
Obviously, as someone concerned about what's going on in the world, you see October 7th, you see the aftermath, which was in odd ways even more shocking, just the reaction to what had happened. At what point do you think This Is My Next Project was discovering Jonathan Cahn's book? Was that sort of the key that unlocked things? What was your creative process to get to where we are right now?
In my case, it worked in 3 steps. My wife and I went to Israel for the first time at the end of 2022, and I discovered this biblical archaeology, which I didn't know enough about. I mean, I've been debating leading atheists around the world, people like Christopher Hitchens, so I'm familiar with the domain of Christian apologetics. But what I didn't realize is that in the last couple of decades, coming out of the ground in Israel, but not only in Israel, are these coins, these clay seals, these stone inscriptions, these artifacts. And what they're doing is they are historically authenticating figures in the Bible. So you have all these figures in the Bible, some in the New Testament, many in the Old, people like Pontius Pilate, the high priest Caiaphas, the prophets Jeremiah, Isaiah, King David, going back 1,000 years before Christ. So these figures were in the Bible, but only in the Bible. But now, via archaeology, they're jumping into the pages of history. And I thought, this is fascinating. And I'm like, why aren't we hearing this from like the synagogues and the churches? Why aren't pastors talking about this? So I thought to myself, I wonder if there's an interesting film that would cover this territory, because after all, it is also very visual. You're looking at things and you can make sense of them. Then fast forward a year and we have October 7th. And then my wife is in a Telegram channel where she's collecting all this footage and showing it to me. Look at this, look at this. Some of it, of course, is hard to watch. Yeah. But I'm like, I don't understand why this footage is not being released. Like the world hasn't seen it. And 2 years later, that's still the case. So that's how I opened this film, by the way, The Dragon's Prophecy. Then along comes Jonathan Cahn, and he introduces a new element, which is the element of biblical prophecy. So I say to myself, all right, I have the archaeology, that's the ancient past. Then I have the war, and now, of course, the peace plan, that's the present. And then we have Cahn, who is giving us a tantalizing look at biblical forecasting, you could call it. And so if I can weave these together into a tapestry, it's going to make a really interesting film.
Yeah, and obviously it did. You want to touch briefly on the footage that you include in the movie. It's in the beginning. It's hard to watch. I think it's as tastefully presented as possible, but you also can't escape what's happening on the screen. Do you get the sense, and you kind of hinted at this, that not everyone has, not that they've seen this particular footage, but there's other clips out there that were shot by Hamas during this atrocity. Do you get the sense that people just aren't even aware, they haven't seen it yet?
Well, I think the problem, and this is I think a blunder on the part of the government of Israel, in my opinion, they decided not to show the footage. Their reason was, I think, good, which is for the families of the hostages. Let's respect them.
Sure.
But see, to me, as a filmmaker, and Christian, I don't have to tell you this, you know this as well as anybody, if I were to say to you, I grew up in India, and I tell you about my life, it is a whole different thing to know about me than if I were to show you a video and say, that's me at the age of 7, that's my house, that's my family, that's the stuff we ate for breakfast. That's a whole different experiential idea of what it's like to grow up in India. So I thought it would be very important to put people right on the scene. And I think what makes it particularly fascinating and even eerie is you're not seeing it from the attacker's point of view. In a typical film, you have a family, they're in blissful solitude, and then somebody breaks a window and the bad guys come in. You see it from the family's point of view. In this case, the opposite. you are like on a motorcycle with a GoPro and you're riding into the kibbutzes across the fence.
Mhm.
You're coming from Gaza. You're with the attackers in this case. So I thought that was a particularly remarkable.
Mhm.
And of course, the footage serves the deeper point of also bringing you kind of face to face with evil, right? Because
Yeah.
evil in the world never says, it never wears a name tag. I'm evil. It wears the name tag. I'm good. I'm doing something that is very necessary and important and even virtuous. And of course, after October 7, Allahu Akbar. So God is great. We are doing God's will. So these are the questions that we wrestle with in the film. And so it begins in a very gritty way on the ground, but then pretty soon you're in a very wide angle lens and you're talking about things like, how does the war between Israel and Hamas resemble the ancient battles in the Bible
Yeah.
between the Israelites and, say, the Philistines?
Obviously, you have to watch the film to get all the different connections and all the just astounding ways that the past and the present are colliding or connecting. Can you give us just one example of something in the film you can share where it really kind of hammers home the point that the overall film is making?
So let's take the example of the Philistines, by the way, were the ancient enemies of Israel, perhaps the most persistent. The Israelites had other enemies, the Amalekites and the Hittites and the Moabites, but the Philistines were they were the most long-lasting. Now, the name Philistine, the name Palestine, it's the same name. In fact, it's the same word transported through history. But here's the point. This is a point, by the way, I credit to Jonathan Cahn. It's not just the same name, it's the same tactics.
Yeah.
So when there's a biblical hero named Samson who represents the strength of Israel, Samson is captured by, of all people, the Philistines. The Bible says that they blinded him. So kind of in the same way that Israel was blinded on October 7th. The Bible says they dragged him to Gaza. So Gaza's in the Bible. It was one of the main cities of the place called Philistia, which pretty much covered what we now call the Gaza Strip. And the Bible says that the people of Gaza came out and they wanted Samson to be stripped of his clothes and brought out so that, quote, he may entertain us. Sure enough, right after October 7th, captives were stripped to the waist, brought out, paraded for the entertainment of the people of Gaza, who were screaming and shouting in joy, celebrating. And so Khan makes this arresting statement in the film. He goes, Samson, 3,000 years ago, was kind of the first hostage of Gaza.
Yeah.
So this is the kind of, intriguing and kind of mind-bending type of comparison that you get a lot of in this film. In the end, it's not forcing a point of view on you. It's getting you to really think through some big issues and take your own stand.
Yeah, and I think that you visually represent all these different connections so well in the film. That's a credit to you as a filmmaker. Yeah, obviously the peace deal just happened. It's remarkable. Whether it can last is the big question. Obviously, it changes the way you interact and engage with your film. Obviously, it's still important. Obviously, it matters. It's almost even more important now, just because history suggests this. The ebb and flow will continue. But how does making this film, and it's such a deeply personal process for you as a storyteller, how did that influence the way you've seen the last few days?
Well, the remarkable thing is the film sort of has darkness and light built into it. And it's almost like the events as they unfold are highlighting the one side or the other. So the darkness is not only October 7th, but it's really what the film tries to unfurl is the devil's handbook. And you realize, people often say, like, what would Jesus do? Or what would God think about this? But we don't often ask, well, how does the devil see it? The film goes there, but it doesn't leave you there. And so there is a note of exhilaration, of spiritual restoration. So some of the mood that people talked about after Charlie Kirk's assassination, for example, the darkness and then also the call to light, they're both in the film. So when Trump gets up there and says things like, it's a new dawn, that's in the film too. But I would say that if you believe the Bible seems to say, look, these things in the final sense are not going to be settled until the end of time. This is not to say that you can't make measurable progress. It's not to say that you can't have good days. But the idea that this will somehow be, let's just say, an unending era of peace and prosperity. Again, you don't have to be theological. You just have to look at who you're dealing with.
Yes.
You're dealing with a group whose name, Hamas, in Hebrew basically means destruction or violence. You're dealing with a group that's dedicated to that. You're dealing with a group that says things like, we love death. You're dealing with moms who say, I've given 2 sons to the war. And you might expect her to say, I don't want this war to go on because I got 2 more sons. But no, she's like, I can't wait for the next 2 to be killed also. They can be martyrs. So we're dealing here with some intractable problems. Trump has done better than any president I know in making headway here. And I want to give him the full credit for that.
Yeah.
I also like the fact that he's outlining this almost messianic vision for the future, which I think is something that we need to hear. But at another side of us, and again, these sides are both in the film, another side of us says, well, we also have to remember that the bad guys aren't going away. They haven't actually had a true change of heart. They might have been bludgeoned into a temporary truce, but their motives are going to remain the same. And so there's going to be a lot for us to deal with. The film is not at any risk of becoming obsolete.
Oh gosh, no, it's actually more important now than it was a week ago, honestly. One thing I want to mention is this is just my interpretation. I think you can confirm it. There were sequences in the film that felt like they were maybe AI generated. And I know that in Hollywood, that's the third rail. You can't go there, and I understand that from many perspectives. But you're a filmmaker who doesn't have a Sony or a Paramount or a Warner Brothers behind you. So I imagine it's sort of a necessary way to get the story across. I just want to get your thoughts as an artist about that process, the good and the bad, and can you understand some of the fears behind it too?
For sure. I mean, what we do with the AI is very kind of defined and concrete. And that is, we use it to recreate biblical times. Now, you know as well as I do that it would take hundreds of thousands of dollars to shoot a single scene.
Oh, yeah.
Normally for a documentary, what you do is you by and large use clips from other movies. But if we were to take clips from, Quo Vadis over here and the 10 Commandments over there and the Passion of the Christ over here, what would happen is there'd be a jumpiness. You'd basically be seeing that these are flashes from other movies that you may or may not have seen. What the AI does is it gives you a certain type of visual consistency. You also recognize it to be AI. So the film is 90% our own footage. But at times, I'm standing on the Pilgrimage Road, which is the ruins of an old biblical highway. And I thought how cool it is to go from me standing on these ruins to then seeing what that road might have actually looked like when Mary and Joseph are walking a 12-year-old Jesus to the temple. You can totally see how they might lose their kid. And so the AI really helps to show, the ancient pilgrims, and they're selling loaves and there are birds flying around and they're exchanging coins. That's how it must have felt like. And so we use the AI sparingly, but I think in a pretty effective way.
Yeah. One thing I want to ask you about, just in kind of taking a broader look at the culture. I mean, you've been at the forefront of this. You're a pioneer in the space. People who are on the right, or even just unorthodox storytellers, are now getting their chance to tell their movies. I mean, like you mentioned, like the AI access wasn't available to you 10 years ago. There are filmmakers who put up a website, they get a documentary, they might put things on X, and all of a sudden millions of people are seeing it. It's a whole new world. It sounds grandiose, but it's true. How would you judge what's happening as a right of center person, looking at the arts, looking at pop culture? What's working? What needs to get to be improved?
Well, the hard thing for someone like me is simply the fact that because there is so much content and there's so much free content, it's very difficult to have these films be economically viable. Because to do them well, I mean, as I do, that you can spend $50,000 and make a documentary. You interview 7 guys in the same room, and then you just throw some backgrounds and you take some stock footage and you just slap it together. But it costs a few $1,000,000 to make a really good film, and it costs even more money to then market it. So you have to get it back. And that means people need to be willing to pay for this kind of content. I think what happens is in today's world, particularly because people are jumping around from one place to another, they'll watch a few clips and then they go, well, I kind of have the gist of what this guy is trying to say. And so there is, for me, the challenge of making really good films where people feel like, you know what, I need to have the actual experience of watching this film.
Mhm.
And that is hard to do.
Yeah.
And as you know, there's virtually no one in this space who, by and large, can make this stuff work economically. Michael Moore is pretty much out of the documentary film business. Last I heard, he was like giving away tickets to his films, like on the streets of New York.
Yeah.
I'm not quite reduced to that stage
Mm.
yet. But I do think that this is in many ways my most cinematic, and some other people have said the most sort of profound themes that I've covered in any of my films.
Yeah, I mean, I've watched almost all of them, if not all of them, and I do see the evolution. I mean, not that you were a bad storyteller from the jump, but I can see the richness of the presentation has grown and grown over each particular film. Do you have a project that's lined up next? I don't want to kind of go too far ahead, but I'm always curious about what you have to say. And like you said, you seem to have a finger on the zeitgeist more than most people. What's on your agenda at this point?
So, I'll focus this fall on this project, and on trying to get it as widely
Yeah.
circulated as possible. It also has international possibilities that some of my other films don't have, and like you say, it's more timely now than when I made it. So
Yeah.
it's always nice to surf on the wave. It's very difficult when you make a film on a topic that no one's like talking about right now.
Not the issue.
Yeah, and so what I'm doing is I'm hatching a couple of new projects for next year. Again, I do it not by kind of trying to take the temperature of the culture. I kind of assume I already have that.
Yeah.
And so I think to myself, like, what's really intriguing to me now? What do I think I can deal with in a fresh and original way?
Mhm.
I never start out by wanting to do a film that is a regurgitation of the debate as it currently exists. I want to move it forward. And so I have to ask myself, what do I have to say in this next project that is genuinely original,
Mhm.
genuinely important, and is going to make a difference? Comes back to that sort of good old Lyndon Johnson question that he would ask after every meeting. It's like, and therefore what? Meaning what follows from all this? Intriguing though it might be, what is the practical takeaway or the consequence of it all? And so those are the questions I try to answer in my own mind before embarking on a project.
One last question. Maybe the budget maybe gives me the answer because it could be much more expensive, but would you ever want to make a narrative film to kind of move away from the documentary style format? I know your films aren't specifically documentary. They're their own beast in a way, but has that itch ever presented itself? Was that something you'd like to scratch?
For sure. I think it was going back now to one of my earliest films, America. I think it was America. I had all the top people at Lionsgate at our premiere in LA,
Hmm.
and they looked at the film and then they pulled me aside and they go, "This is a really good movie." And they go, "Dinesh, you really should consider doing feature films because you have the knack, you have the eye for it."
Yeah.
And so I am intrigued by that idea. I think these days we have to always look to see what are the right sort of platforms that one could make that kind of film.
Mhm.
The conservative right of center market is not accustomed, with some exceptions. I mean, Angel Studios does its own thing. Daily Wire has done some stuff in its space. But I think in terms of really breaking ground in feature films that have mainstream markets and are widely watched, I would like to pioneer that space. But I feel like it has to be the right project and the right type of distribution. Christian,
Yeah.
if I can say about this film, the website is thedragonsprophecyfilm.com. It's the dragons, plural, prophecy. And don't forget the film, thedragonsprophecyfilm.com. The film is in streaming. It's in DVD. I think people will find it, well, as you said, it's timely, and yet it's also very timeless.
Yeah, and it's also provocative too. Listen, if you only saw the movie to see some of that footage that Hamas captured, it's important. Like you said, I think the Israeli government created a maybe a 45-minute film, sort of it's ghoulish to say like a best of what was going on, and they showed it to certain journalists and they showed it to certain people in Hollywood, but maybe they should have just let it out. And I understand the sensitivity. Maybe they could have blurred out faces and things, but as much it's why you do what you do and you understand what's going on. To see it is so different, and I think it lands differently, and you just can't get those images out of your head. That, of course, that's just part of the Dragon's Prophecy. Do check it out. And again, it's funny you mentioned the snippet. You get a gist of the movie. I want to give people a gist of the movie, but you really have to see it from start to finish to get what's going on and get the breadth of the conversation here. So, Dinesh, thank you so
When I
much for your
talk to
time.
people about the film, they're like, "Well, Dinesh, are you giving away the film?" I'm
Oh
like,
no.
"Well, I can't give away the film even if I want to, right?" It's
Yes.
kind of like
Yeah.
asking, take any good film, like
Mhm.
take The Shawshank Redemption. If you
Yeah.
ask people like, "What's it about?" They're going to be like, "Well, it's about friendship. Well, it's about prisons." It doesn't even begin to do justice to
That's
the
right.
experience of watching the film. And the same is true here. I can talk
That's
about
right.
it. I give you little provocative hints about what's in the film,
Yeah.
but you got to check the film out
No,
for yourself. So, The
you're a
Dragon's
veteran
Prophecy.
filmmaker now. You know the deal, and you know how to produce films that matter, that speak to what we're talking about right now, and that grab you by the collar and don't let go. And that's, of course, The Dragon's Prophecy. The Dragon's Prophecy film.com. Check it out. Streaming, DVD, whatever your preferred method of watching it, but just do watch it. Dinesh, thanks so much. A treat to talk to you as always. And I look forward to your next projects. They're always good.
Hey, Christian, it's always a pleasure. Thank you.
Our second interview this week is with director John McPhail. Now, he's not a household name. He's not a Steven Spielberg, but he's a young, talented filmmaker. And he caught my attention a couple of years ago with a movie called Anna and the Apocalypse. It was a zombie movie with music and humor and a lot of heart. And of course, some brains. It's a zombie movie. And I thought, oh my gosh, what an interesting storyteller. I'm kind of curious to see what he has up his sleeve next. Well, turns out it's a movie called Grow. It's a story about a young girl. She's been kind of passed around the foster care system, finds a new place to call home, and now she wants to make her mark by entering a pumpkin growing competition. But it's not so easy. This is a small town that takes its pumpkins very seriously. There are sort of evil players afoot here.
Every time I touch a plant, it's like I can feel what they're feeling.
She's entering the pumpkin contest.
This is all out vegetable warfare.
You want to steal our secrets?
Release the hounds!
And even better, there's a significant role played by the great Nick Frost. He is part of this ensemble cast. He is wonderful as always, as is the film. This is an absolute charmer. One of those, it's good for the whole family, and the whole family will enjoy it. Parents won't be sitting there cringing while their kids have a gay old time. It's just a really sweet, charming, family-friendly movie with a bite, with some things to say, with some stories to share about families and connection, and even the environment too. And don't worry, it's not preachy, but that's part of it as well. So I hope you enjoyed my conversation with John McPhail. I'm so curious to see what he does next. He's one of those filmmakers you could think, oh gosh, this guy's got talent. He's got an interesting eye for stories. And I'm always curious to see how those careers evolve. And I think his is well on its way. The new movie, again, is Grow. It is in theaters right now. So please enjoy my conversation with Grow's director, John McPhail. We're all set. Well, John, thank you so much for joining the show and sharing a few minutes. I do appreciate it.
No, thank you, mate. Thank you very much for taking the time to talk to me about the film.
Well, obviously, you've done horror before. You've woven in some humorous elements. You got that under your belt. This one is a much more gentle story. The humor is still there. It's a little bit of a fantasy. As a filmmaker, as a young filmmaker, what's it like to kind of expand your canvas and kind of go in this a little bit of a different direction for what you've done in the past?
I mean, like, what always draws me to all scripts, it doesn't really matter what genre, is character. I just love the sort of the Charlie Diner dynamic, that sort of unconventional mother-daughter story, and like sort of like characters that are like just fireworks popping off all around it. I love that. And like I love an audience. That's what I'm here for, is to tell stories to audiences, and I want to sort of explore that. For this, it was like what I really wanted to do was create that shared experience. I grew up watching the Goonies and Short Circuit and all these sort of family films where my parents, it was like a Friday, Saturday night, we would all be huddled around the TV watching a VHS. My mum's either taped off the TV up with rented from Blockbuster or something, and that was everything to me, that at weekends, and I just had this sort of this, as I say, this real curiosity to try and see if I could emulate that. As I say, I wanted the kids laughing, the parents laughing, even the little horror elements that I put in, which is to sort of scare them, but also the parents are laughing and the kids are scared, and it's as I say, it's just this sort of real fun dynamic.
Yeah. I won't spoil this. An homage to Psycho, which is just wonderful, completely G-rated, but it is, I think parents in the audience will enjoy that. Some films for the whole family have some darker themes to them, heavier themes. This one for sure, you've got a young girl who misses her mom. There's looking for new connections. Talk about, weaving that into a story without scaring the kids, without making it too heavy. I think you've got the balance just right. But as a storyteller, how do you work on that kind of that maneuver because it's not easy, I'd imagine.
Well, it's just trying to connect like the audience, and I think that we can all sort of like understand that relationship between the two of them, that reluctance, and then that sort of like coming together.
Yeah.
Charlie's desperate to belong and desperate to be a family, and Diana's lost the urge to sort of to nurture and to grow and to sort of watch that kind of come together. I
Mhm.
felt like I love color in film, like I love it, and like trying to sort of make the farm and everything feel really colourful, and through like even their costume and things like that, where we start to really bring colour into their lives again as they sort of grow. And I
Mhm.
feel like that will keep that sort of dynamic there. Like
Yeah.
even sort of the mum side of it, again, not to get any spoilers or anything like that, but I think it's dead easy for like the audience to hate her. And I
Uh-huh.
always feel like the challenge would be to understand her, and going
Yeah.
through that, like I thought would be a better approach rather than sort
Mhm.
of demonizing her and sort of, do you know what I mean? And like I felt, Catherine Drysdale done a really, really great job with that. Um, um, but again, going back to sort of like the Charlie and Diana dynamic, I feel like it's crucial. And when I've got two like really, really good actors just bouncing off each other, and then
Yeah.
Nick Frost into into it as well, and it's just magic.
Yeah. The young star, I don't know her before, Priya Rose Brockwell. Brookwell. I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly. She's terrific. I mean, she really carries the movie, and it's incumbent on her to kind of hold things together. Talk about working with her and working with the young actors. I mean, I imagine as a director, working with adults, you can steer them a certain way. They accept, direction. A younger star just doesn't have the years of experience, but she handles it so well. What was the dynamic between the two of you?
Oh, Priya's incredible. Like she's like hands down one of the best actresses I've ever worked with. Like she takes I would speak to her the same way I would speak to Nick and Golda. Like, and I would
Uh,
walk away going, oh no, I've just spoken to a child like she's in her 40s. Like, like, but she's so clever. She's so intuitive. I always said to her as well, like when we were shooting, which is in the moment, if it feels right, go your gut, just go with it. And like, I trusted her a lot because she's, she could handle it all. And as well as that, she grew in confidence with that as well. She had so
uh,
much confidence coming in, but like, like things like that, just going with things in the moment and trying things,
mhm.
particularly as when you've got when you've got Nick, there, and she was just sort of, as I said, she loved Golda. She just adored Golda, and she's a force of nature herself. She's an
Yeah.
incredible actress, incredible woman as well. So like
Mhm.
she's surrounded by the two of them all day, she just sort of, as I say, just took everything on. And with Priya, like you just had to remind her, like, like if you had a long break of going between things, just to be like, we're here, 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 and she had it. She was
Yeah.
just incredible.
When you're working, I mean, this is mostly an adult cast, but there are like her and other younger performers here. Does that help you make a family-friendly movie? I mean, we're both adults, our childhoods are behind us, but you summon your inner child as best you can. But having the real thing in front of you, do you kind of look at their feedback, gauge their reactions? Does their presence maybe help really focus what you're trying to achieve here?
I don't know. I think we kind of. I know what I want before I come into it. I'm very collaborative director. Like I
Uh,
love working with actors. I love working with my crew as well. But I'm working with like such talent all around me. So, but I know what I want from it, and
mhm.
then from that, everybody's just building on it. So going in, like as I say, I knew what I wanted. I'm a big kid. Like it doesn't matter how old I get, I'm a big kid. So like there's lots of things in that that's just bringing out that inner child really, because you're getting to play in that space. And
Mhm.
like I don't know how many times I say this. This was one of the best sets I've ever had. Like it was so much fun. Like Golda and Nick didn't want to go to their trailers. They just wanted to be on set all the time. They just wanted to be around the crew. Like, and that fed into the rest of the cast. Like
Uh-huh.
nobody wanted to go to their trailers. The kids, we were having to like take them off set to go to like to do their education and stuff because they're still studying and they have to have downtime as well as their
Yeah.
education time. But their stand-ins, like the kids who played their stand-ins, were so funny, like so, so funny, and like so, we were always laughing. So, like, I feel like when you create an environment like that, and like everybody's having like a really, really nice time, everybody's enjoying coming to work and having so much fun, it kind of bleeds into the film.
Yeah. How do you create? I mean, obviously the actors play their part. They've got the personalities to match the set you're trying to create, the atmosphere. But what can you do, maybe even early on in the shoot, where you kind of let people know this is not going to be a traditional set. This is going to be more open, more fun. Are there things as a director, now that you've got a few films under your belt, that you can kind of gently set in motion to kind of make that happen and make it permissible?
I always do it in prep. Like as soon as I sit down with my heads at departments, I tell them what I'm looking for. But like as I always tell them before they go, is like I want your stamp all over this. Like I want
Yeah.
you involved in this. Like bringing everybody in. And with the cast, it was like on the very like I try to do this on every first day of rehearsal, which is I do a day of clown. And it's not clown like ha he like shh. It's more mime. It's more about your physicality and
Right.
understanding your body. But there's a lot of fun games in there, and there's a lot of
Yeah.
like silliness that's involved in that. So when me, even as the director, is stepping in with my cast, and it's like silly games. It's like you have a moo off where it's two people sort of down on all fours and then look at each other and then moo. First one to laugh is out. And when you've got
Uh-huh.
the director on the floor mooing at the number one on the call sheet, like it just melts away all that kind of like fear or ego or
Yeah.
like, and this is to be fun and we have to
Yeah.
explore this and try this and like as I say, it's just about, as I say, trying to be as open as possible with
Yeah.
people right from the get-go and then carrying that through.
Gotcha.
Um,
You set the things, they just take it from there. Let's talk Nick Frost. He's so great on screen. He's perfect with this kind of movie because he's so charming and lovable, but a little eccentric at the same time. Where is he? What's he like on behind the scenes, working on different setups? I mean, what do you see that we don't get a chance to see? We see the finished product. He's always charming, off the charts. But working with him, what did you find?
Honestly, it was a dream. Like I know people will be like, no. Honestly, he's exactly what you would imagine. Like genuinely, what you would imagine.
Mhm.
He's such a fun guy, such a giving guy.
Yeah.
Um, he's always trying things, like and so, like offering things and going with things in the moment. And again, at the same time, if it's not something I'm digging, I'll just he takes it. And he's like, yeah, no problem. And
Uh-huh.
he doesn't have like a as I say, like an ego, like, and that's what would really really surprised me, like right across the board, none of them did. Like again,
Mhm.
Jane Horrocks and Tim McInerney, I grew up watching. Like I like
Mhm.
like I loved Blackadder. That was like the huge in my household, and I'm getting to work with Tim, and he just wants to play. He just wants to have fun, and
Yeah.
like and as I say, the same with Nick. He was just always the Nick Frost.
Enough said. One of the things that's interesting about the film, it has sort of a gentle environmental message here. Certainly not hitting you over the head. It's certainly woven into the story from what Charlie can do to other elements there. Share, I think kids will get a interesting perception of kind of taking care of the world around us, but talk a little bit about that element of the film.
I mean, and like you said, I never wanted to beat MD over the head with it. Like I felt like the core message was there, and that the film is about nurturing and growth, and,
Yeah, yeah,
like, and with those themes in there, and there's certain little things that we're doing, trying to move away from the chemicals and become more organic, and
yeah.
and I think kids can understand that. And again, it's never browbeating them. We did originally, and we shot a couple of like set like scenes where I think it was Nick that spoke up a little bit more about the turmoil that's going on in the world. And when we watched it, it was actually my editor that was like, I don't think we need this. Like, I really don't. Like, it's just like as a father, like he was coming into this going, like, do I want my kids listening to this? And do I want to be thinking about it while I'm there? And as I
Mhm.
said, audience is so important to me. So anything that was ever going to weak people out or make them feel uncomfortable in a place where
Mhm.
they're there to enjoy themselves, they're there
Yeah.
to forget about the world's problems for a little bit. But I feel like the eco message is there and that sort of like, obviously trying to get kids to sort of be excited about plants and
Mhm.
growth and things like that is all there without, like forcing it down MD's throat.
Gotcha. I want to backpedal a little bit. I just was so charmed by Anna and the Apocalypse. It was such a project that could have went off the rails and just been a disaster, but of course it wasn't. Clear cult hit and just so charming and so well assembled. What did you take away from that project? Because as a younger filmmaker, it just seemed like to balance those elements, to bring humor, to bring music, to bring a dash of horror, it seemed like a very daunting task. Obviously, you succeeded, but did it build your confidence? Did it kind of let you tackle different types of stories? What did you take away from the experience?
Well, a lot of it, as I said, has been about growth and that sort of. My first film was like a 50 grand like
Mhm.
romantic comedy that me and all my mates made. We'd been making shorts building to that, so this was that like next step for me.
Yeah.
And I feel like after it that I could take it. With Anna, I was so precise with like how I wanted to use the three-act structure
Mhm.
as ways of building genre. Even like my love for color, like like with all those sort of reds and greens and yellows and blues. And by the end of it, because it's the film sort of sours, those colours twist and become the sort of peaches and pinks and turquoises. It's still keeping it nice and colourful and vibrant, but there is that shift and change. And obviously, I love taking that through, and that's
Uh,
something like that I want to keep trying. Like as I go and we grow, that was kind of the same thing. I took
mhm.
the color orange and then pulled it out of everything as much as possible and sort of built all the color around it. With little hints of orange here, but once the pumpkin arrives, it feels like it just finishes the palette.
Mhm.
Which is because now as they've came together, and the farm starts to get more colorful
Mhm.
and
Yeah, it's fascinating. It's the kind of thing you probably on some level get, but don't maybe not even gonna can name it, but there it is. One quick last question, just because you've worked with horror before. Horror seems like it's having a moment right now. We've had some really great films, obviously working well at the box office. I feel like there's a generation of young storytellers like yourself who really kind of get the genre. Do you think it's just sort of a cyclical thing, or any sort of thoughts on why horror is just having sort of a close up at this point?
I don't think it's ever left though. Like I love horror. I'm like
Mhm.
having horror movies. Like I love horror. But it's something I grew up with, and I think that horror can always kind of challenge us. It can take us into the sort of some of the darkest places of even from humanity to your
Mhm.
psychology. And then as well as it can be really funny. It can be really close to the bone, and again, sort of taking as I say, like a proper close look at humanity
Yeah.
and our demons. Like the films I grew up watching. Like The Ring and things as well, and even something really close like The Babadook, which is all about trauma and exploring that kind of trauma. And we,
Yeah.
as like an audience, we've all experienced trauma in our lives, and sort of facing that in a film, I think, is always. Um, uh, is satisfying or like facing those fears.
Mhm.
That's what I love about it.
Gotcha. Well, I hope that you'll go back to horror at some point, but for now, we're talking Grow. It is in theaters starting October 3rd, so do check it out. Fun for the whole family. I smiled a lot through this movie. I think people will like it. And it's the kind of movie where, yes, the kids will love it, but I think parents in the crowd will be equally charmed and amused by it, which is like the perfect, the sweet spot as it were. But John, thanks for taking the time to speak to me, and wish you all the best with the film.
No, thanks very much, Christian. Like I really appreciate this. Thank you.
Well, that's it for this week's unique special episode, a very special episode of the Grand Blossom tradition. Hopefully, this will be healing in no time and I'll be back to my regular workload. Again, thanks for your patience. Thanks for listening to the show and also telling a friend if you're enjoying the conversations we're having here. And do check out HollywoodInToto.com. It is my website now in its 11th year. News, reviews, commentary, everything from a right leaning perspective. We don't want to chase away our liberal friends. They can read as well, they can enjoy the conversations. And a lot of the content there is straight movies, entertainment, TV, music, just entertainment in general. We've got a run of great new reviews last few days with classic horror movies from our guest critic, Barry Wurst. I love his stuff. I'm so proud to have his writing on the website. And he's going through movies like Misery and Arachnophobia. It's a great blast from the past. And if you love horror movies like I do, and of course, 'tis the season, do check out the reviews. I think you'll enjoy them a lot. And if you haven't seen those movies, well, hit pause on this podcast right now and get those on your TV ASAP. They're great films. Do enjoy them. Again, hopefully this will be healed in no time. Thank you for your patience. Thanks for checking out the show. And please have the very best week possible. Doctor's orders.